Hello, everybody. My name is Kaylin Karina, and I'm a community activist originally from Bath and now living and working in the Portland area to serve the at-risk youth in the school system and larger community. My activism is rooted in cura personalis, or the care for the whole person. With a holistic approach to my work, I aim to serve the full needs of those I have the opportunity to serve each and every day. I see the news and I think change is possible. Change is happening. Maine lawmakers are listening and learning, and most importantly, they are acting on multiple fronts to fix what's broken, to dismantle the systems that perpetuate health disparities and generational poverty. They are evaluating our laws and policymaking through a racial equity lens, and they are prioritizing our shared resources to create new opportunities for historically marginalized communities. I am honored to be a small part of this change in Augusta, and I'm honored to be lending my voice as we call for the reckoning with the tobacco industry for their targeting of Black and Indigenous communities and people of color. For decades, the tobacco industry has been marketing menthol cigarettes directly, systemically, and relentlessly to African Americans, particularly children and young adults. The continued perpetuation and appropriation of the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities for the sale of tobacco must end. There is no question. There is no debate here. This must end. I'm here today because I see what young people today are facing, how hard it is to resist tobacco use. Menthol and mint-flavored products was never a part of our culture until the tobacco industry made it so. This is about justice. This is about fairness and confronting disparities that are created and perpetuated by the tobacco industry. This is about getting a deadly product off our store shelves. I hope Maine will stand together and say enough is enough. It's time to end the sale of menthol cigarettes and all flavored tobacco products. Thank you again for letting me be a part of this mission and a part of this message. I'm so honored to lend my voice. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Kaylin. And so now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Eben Francis. Eben, when you click on your video and begin speaking, then you should be good to go.
In today's world, nicotine and tobacco products are everywhere. According to truthinitiative.org, 16.1% of American Indian and Alaska Native middle schoolers use e-cigarettes. As if that statistic wasn't large enough, 40.4% of American Indian and Alaska Native high school students use e-cigarettes. I am a part of the Penobscot Nation, one of the 4 Wabanaki tribes here in Maine. In our culture, we use tobacco as a way to give thanks. It is sad to see something of cultural significance being used to exploit young people. Even as a 13-year-old, I know people my age who have used e-cigarettes or other commercial tobacco products. Big tobacco companies use flavors and fun names to attract kids and use nicotine as an addictive. This clearly shows that we're being targeted, which is scary for many reasons. For one, the risks of nicotine aren't taken seriously or hardly even known, making teens think that there will be no effect, which makes e-cigarettes even more popular in teen culture. Another reason this is very scary is that vaping can become a gateway to other commercial tobacco products and other substances, creating even more health hazards and lifelong addictions for teens. As e-cigarettes become more popular, the danger increases, as they will be easier to access. However, there are things people can do. Stores can do a better job at restricting underage tobacco and e-cigarette sales, and schools can educate more on the effects of commercial tobacco products and the chemicals inside of them. Most importantly, the Maine legislature can end the sale of flavored tobacco products. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eben. Very appreciative of you being here and taking the time away from school today. I'm going to turn this over to Jaden Love. Jaden, you're up next.
Okay. Traditional tobacco has been used by Penobscots and many other Native American tribes for centuries as a medicine with cultural and spiritual importance. But traditional tobacco has been tainted by the tobacco industry. Chemicals poured into tobacco to make it more addicting and flavorful. When I entered high school, vape products hit the market, and it seemed like middle schoolers and high schoolers from every school had one in their hands. The bathrooms were called the vape room or the jewel room. More flavors hit the market like mint, cucumber, mango, and many more, which made it more appealing to youth. Big tobacco companies target youth with flavors, appealing advertisements, and fancy packaging. Minorities are targeted the most when it comes to commercial tobacco products. Native Americans are more likely to smoke cigarettes or vapes and become addicted. Our medicine has been turned into poison by the commercial tobacco industry. They are killing people and it needs to stop.
Jaden, thank you so much. I appreciate you and Eben both being here and taking time off from school today. We're very grateful and honored to have you here. Next speaker is Shane Diamond.
Thanks, Carol. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shane Diamond. Am I in the center? We're good. Good morning, everyone. Okay. My name is Shane Diamond. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a person who identifies as trans and queer. I'm also a former smoker, and I know all too well how the tobacco industry has a long and lethal history of targeting people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and queer. They sold us on a feeling of comfort, of connection, and often of momentary escape. They used our daily experiences of homophobia and transphobia and otherness, and they built us a community and a culture that drew us in, that normalized tobacco use and made us feel accepted and cool, even as it was impacting our health, even if it was literally killing us. Smoke breaks at the bars, smoke breaks at work, smoke breaks during tense family dinners, a socially acceptable response to a stressful situation, a way to walk outside, literally and figuratively, to take a break. For decades, the tobacco industry has targeted us with their products, their advertising campaigns, their bar promotions, their product giveaways, and their sponsorship of pride events all around the country, in all cases portraying tobacco use as a normal part of LGBTQ life. Flavored tobacco products are just part of the bait, an entry point, if you will, a way to make those first experiences with tobacco smoother and easier. Flavors like menthol made it easier to stop using tobacco and much harder to quit. The result is a multi-generational health tragedy. 1 in 3 transgender adults smoke cigarettes. 1 in 3 LGBT smokers smoke menthols. And overall, LGBTQ adults smoke at rates up to 2.5 times higher than straight adults. The tobacco industry preys on marginalized communities. You've heard from the panelists before me. They lure us in, they hook us, they addict us, and they make it as hard as possible to quit. Today, we call for justice and equity, end the sale of menthol and other flavored tobacco products. I'd like to add that I consider myself extremely fortunate to have found the Maine Tobacco Helpline, which set me up with patches and lozenges and the coaching I needed to successfully quit smoking. Before I got there, I bought a Juul device and switched to vaping. Very quickly, I found myself taking in way more nicotine than ever before when I was smoking cigarettes because I could just sit in my apartment and smoke all the time. E-cigarettes aren't for quitting. They're a new way for the tobacco industry to attract and hook kids. Thank you.
Shane, thank you so much for being here with us today and for those powerful remarks. Next speaker is Dr. Jeffrey Stone. Dr. Stone.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jeff Stone, Dr. Stone. I'm a pediatrician at Waterville Pediatrics. And I've been practicing in pediatrics for almost 29 years now. This is hometown, Waterville. I came back here and my whole thing on pediatrics is prevention. You know, we know smoking causes disease, disability, harming nearly every organ in the body. Smoking causes cancer, heart disease, lung disease, stroke, diabetes, and COPD. Those aren't issues I deal with every day. But that's what happens down the line if these kids start, smoking products and for the addiction. I'm into the prevention piece. I love immunizations. I love preventing diseases. The But you got to remember what's happening also the brain. You know, nicotine exposure during adolescence and young adulthood can cause long-term harm to brain development. Our brains are still growing up until about age 26. We all know about it. That's when we really start to develop an adult brain. So it's so susceptible to nicotine addiction at this age. And we know that if you haven't started smoking by age 26, you're probably not going to smoke. Think about that for your own examples. For people you know that smoke, they all started early. So we need to try to prevent this. So addressing tobacco policy, particularly the tobacco industry's use of flavored tobacco products, is one of the first things we can and must do to set things right. We know the science of menthol, you know, why they did this. It makes it much more dangerous with the menthol and the flavored tobacco products. Menthol numbs the throat, masks the harsh taste of tobacco, and it makes it easier to inhale and inhale more deeply and becoming even more addicted to nicotine. I've watched the explosion of youth e-cigarette use or vaping in my community. Kids tell me their stories. When I do physicals on teenagers, I kick the parents out. I talk to the kids about all these issues, you know, the sex and drugs and everything. And they will tell me how much vaping that's going on. A lot of them will hesitate, say it's not me, it's others. But when I get to it, it is them a lot of times. And it's easy. They like the taste. It's easy. They could sneak it in school. And it's setting up for such addiction to them. We know e-cigarettes come in literally thousands of flavors, cotton candy, strawberry shortcake, you know, flavors. These aren't for adults, these are for kids. And it's to try to hook these kids and get them into, you know, being cool with these tobacco products and then hopefully become adult cigarette smokers. Our kids are sitting ducks, and this would not be happening without the mint, menthol, candy, and fruit flavors that are being targeted to them. We know if you prevent nicotine addiction in kids, you can prevent smoking-related illness in adulthood. Some people say this isn't the time to do this. We got a COVID epidemic. We got bigger things going on. So I want to give you a story that I was at a conference at the end of last February, so almost a year ago. And the first lecturer of the day, on the first day of the conference, was a pediatric pulmonologist, a lung doctor, talking about vaping and how bad it was with the oils from the vaping getting down to lungs. And if we remember back to then a year ago, we were getting the daily update on how many people had died from inhaling this stuff and having vaping deaths. And we thought, oh my God, it's just getting worse and worse. Well, the second day of my lecture, in walks a person in pediatric infectious disease. And she says, well, we're going to erase the topic I had because there's a bigger topic now, COVID. And that was the first really starting hearing about COVID. And she had put together the night before the talk on COVID and how bad it is. And it's just amazing that suddenly the vaping story went away and it was like, oh, COVID is everything. But I want you to realize that, you know, you add up the deaths from the CDC for Maine as of this morning, 636 people have died due to COVID in Maine alone. That's horrible. You know, but how many people die from smoking related deaths every year in the same time period? Not 636, 4 times that, 2,400 people. It's just amazing how bad of a story for smoking is, you know, but we're all focused on COVID. But I think we got to move forward. You know, as a pediatrician, I want to say to lawmakers, we have to be partners with this. We have to go after this vaping and tobacco issue more. We were doing a good job in the beginning. We slipped, but now we got to get back. We need to create the environment that gives Maine youth and young adults a fighting chance to grow up tobacco free. We need to end the sale of all flavored tobacco products in Maine. Thank you.
Dr. Stone, thank you very much. Much appreciated you taking time from your practice to join us today. Our next speaker is Hillary Schneider from the Cancer Society, American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network.
Good morning. My name is Hillary Schneider. I am the Maine Government Relations Director for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. Cancer impacts everyone, but it does not impact everyone equally. In Maine and across the country, tobacco use is the leading preventable risk factor for cancer and one of the leading causes of cancer disparities. In Maine, more than 1 in 5 cancer cases and nearly 1 in 3 cancer deaths are related to smoking. Nationally, Maine has the 6th highest rate of tobacco-related cancer cases and the 11th highest rate of smoking-related cancer deaths. All individuals should have an equal opportunity to live a healthy life. But when it comes to tobacco-related death and disease, that's not the case. Tobacco use is as much a racial and social justice issue as it is a public health concern. The tobacco industry weaponizes flavored products to target youth, LGBTQ individuals, and communities of color. These populations now bear an undue burden of death and disease caused by tobacco use. Although tobacco-related cancer incidence or mortality have declined in the US, we continue to see higher rates of tobacco use and tobacco-related cancer incidence and mortality among individuals with lower incomes and lower educational attainment, as well as among individuals who are Black, Native American, LGBTQ, or who have been diagnosed with a mental or behavioral health condition. Our ability to continue to make progress against cancer relies heavily on eliminating the inequities that exist in cancer prevention and care, including passing strong policies that reduce and prevent tobacco use. As you have heard today, the tobacco industry has spent decades and billions of dollars aggressively marketing menthol and other flavored tobacco products to intentionally hook and addict targeted communities. Menthol in cigarettes increases smoking initiation, undercuts attempts to quit, and leads to greater addiction than non-menthol cigarettes. The tobacco companies are well aware of the addictive nature of these products and deliberately use them to hook new users of their deadly products. And big tobacco strategy has worked. Black people consistently report the highest prevalence of menthol cigarette use. More than half of youth aged 12 to 17 who smoke use menthol cigarettes compared to 1/3 of adult smokers. Among 18 to 25-year-olds who smoke, 59% who identify as lesbian or gay report using menthol cigarettes compared to 46% of those who smoke and identify as heterosexual. These health disparities are the very real result of both the relentless tactics of the industry and the lack of comprehensive action by federal, state, and local policymakers. In Maine, nearly 1 in 5 adults smoke cigarettes, the highest rate in the Northeast. Only 2 Maine counties, Cumberland and Sagadahoc, have adult smoking rates at or below the national average. More than 1 in 15 Maine high school students smoke cigarettes, with a high of 1 in 8 in Washington County. In recent years, overall youth tobacco use in Maine has skyrocketed, largely driven by the youth e-cigarette epidemic. 1 in 2 Maine high school students and 1 in 6 middle school students have used e-cigarettes. Nearly 30% of high school students are current users of e-cigarettes, nearly doubling from 15% in 2017. In Piscataquis County, high school e-cigarette use quadrupled, and it nearly tripled in Oxford County during the same 2-year period. The use of flavored tobacco products by youth and young adults is also high. 95% of adult smokers started before the age of 21, and 4 out of 5 kids who have ever used a tobacco product started with a flavored product. Tobacco companies have developed an array of menthol, mint, and candy flavored products. In fact, there are more than 15,000 e-cigarette flavors, up from just 8,000 in 2014. Products with flavors like cherry, grape, cotton candy, and gummy bear are clearly not aimed at adult smokers. Years of tobacco industry documents confirm the intended use of flavors to target youth, and it's working. Youth report flavors as a leading reason why they use tobacco products and perceive flavored products as less harmful. Put simply, flavors hook kids. Public policy change can and must serve as a central avenue for shielding against and reversing long-standing inequalities, but only when done comprehensively and with the well-being of people of color, people who are low income, and LGBTQ populations in mind. We must also ensure that policies do not perpetuate historical inequalities and play into the hands of who benefit from them. Passing policies like ending the sale of menthol cigarettes and all other flavored tobacco products will not only reduce tobacco use and thereby tobacco-related cancers, but it will also reduce health disparities. We must stand up to big tobacco's attempts to use loopholes and exemptions to weaken policy proposals. If we do not ensure the policy solutions include all tobacco products and all flavors, then the policy will directly fail to protect children in predominantly Black and LGBTQ communities, who we know are being targeted with these dangerous products. Leaving flavored tobacco products on the market prevents us from being one step closer to achieving health equity. We call on the Maine legislature to act now to end the sale of all flavored tobacco products. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hillary. Much appreciation to all of our speakers today. I wanted to alert members of the media that we do have in the file that I sent you, there are a handful of slides in addition to the B-roll. There are a handful of slides. Normally, if we were all together in the Welcome Center, we would have put some of those on foam core and you would have had those available to you. I just want to quickly, if I can make this work, show you just a couple of these so that you can see what we've got. But there are some terrific examples of tobacco industry marketing campaigns over the years. So as we said earlier, you heard speakers say, you know, menthol is used or has been used for decades to engage or to lure and addict African-American communities, targeting them. But there's also examples here in the slide deck of other marginalized communities being targeted. Here we have Indigenous Welcome to Warrior Territory. The next one, these are from Pride, as Shane mentioned, Pride promotions and advertising at Pride festivals. We know the industry uses more than 15,000 flavors. So there's a nice slide here that you can pick up on that. And then we've got some examples of some of the products that you can use as well. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention so that you had that in addition to the B-roll. I'll stop sharing here and I will open it up. I don't know if there are any questions from members of the press. Feel free to either raise your hand or put something into the Q&A. So I've got a question here. It looks like Hannah. Hannah, would you, if you can, I think you've been, there we go.
Yes, I can unmute myself. And I'm wondering, is Evan still on?
Yeah, Evan had a 12 o'clock class, and so I think we may have lost Evan.
All right.
I think we did. Sorry, Hannah.
No
but
worries.
Jaden is still on.
How about, yeah, hey, Jaden. I was just moved by Evan saying that at 13 years old, I mean, he is seeing his friends use tobacco. You are also a young person, you're in these schools. You are seeing people use these products firsthand. I mean, when you see this happen, is there a sense of why kids are trying tobacco in the first place?
I think it's like, it tends to be like somewhat of like a cool thing. So if one person does it or tries it out, then like a lot of like middle schoolers or high schoolers will try it out too, because it's used as like a popularity thing now.
I see. I'm sorry. I'm also just not seeing Jaden on the screen. Is there a way?
Sorry.
Oh,
I must have clicked it off.
No worries. That's so interesting. So it's you know, social pressure.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely became something that like, if one person does it, the next person's going to do it. If they're friends with them, they'll end up doing it. Yeah,
I can see that happening. Well, thank you so much.
And Hannah, would you find it helpful, because Jaden's video wasn't on, would you like her to, you know, restate any of that, or did you get what you need in terms of the video itself?
I mean, if possible, I don't want to, you know, ever force a soundbite, but I mean, Jaden, you are how old again?
Jaden, you're on mute.
I'm 19.
You're 19. Okay. So at what age did you start seeing people caving, I guess, to this social pressure and trying tobacco?
Um, I see it started when I was a freshman, so around like 14, 15. But nowadays I've been seeing around my sister's age, so 14, 15 again, but I've seen 13-year-olds start to do it.
Wow. And Dr. Stone had talked about how, you know, once he closes that door and he's able to speak to these teens firsthand, they are sharing that maybe they are partaking in this. Do you have a message for maybe parents, perhaps, who say, there's no way my kid could be involved in this, Jaden? I mean, are you seeing that, you know, the kid who might not be expected to use is in fact using?
Yeah. It is hidden from a lot of parents. So I would have parents like check in with their children, because it's like every high schooler knows who does it, but it's like the adults have no clue.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Jaden. There's another question actually in the Q&A. So Allegra has asked, have we been in touch with legislators who are on board with this idea? What would next steps look like from here? I'd love, Hillary, would you please respond?
Sure. Yes, we have been in touch with legislators. Representative Michelle Meyer has a bill in that will end the sale of all flavored tobacco products, and that provision is also included, it's my understanding, in a bill sponsored by Representative Rachel Talbot Ross. So yes, and then the next steps will be that I don't believe either of the bills have been printed. So the next step is for the bills to be printed, then they'd be referenced to committee. It's likely both of these bills would appear in front of the Health and Human Services Committee and have a public hearing, and then it would go through the typical legislative process. And I'd also just state, just to, I think it was Hannah's question, I'm the mom of a high school student, a high school freshman, and I have a 5th grader. And I'll say that when my high school student was in middle school was at the time when e-cigarettes use was skyrocketing. I will say that when I first started bringing up my son had reported to me that he was nervous about using the bathroom at school because he was nervous about kids vaping, and that was making him feel anxious. And when I brought it up to his advisor at the time, he tried to reassure me that there were no kids in the middle school in our town using e-cigarettes at the time, that they knew about the problem, but it wasn't happening in their schools. I then described to him how discreetly the use can be, and he was shocked and horrified. And then the next week I saw on the school's Facebook page that the art teacher had posted finding a Juul on her floor in her classroom. And so indeed, what I knew was already existing was the case. And when I was testifying in front of the State House that year, I would remind them, because I think sometimes we forget how young kids in middle school are, but these kids, you know, are babies to me. My babies, you know, they're 12, 13, 14 years old. And those are the kids that are being hooked on these deadly products.
Thank you, Hillary. Hannah, I see that your hand is still up, which it may be just a remnant of your hand being up, but do you have another question?
Are you able to still hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
That was a mistake. I should have lowered my hand, but since I do have an open mic still, I'm wondering if I can ask, you know, beyond working with the legislature to get tangible regulations passed, what else can this group do and we all do to curb this?
Great, thank you for asking. Hillary or Dr. Stone? Hillary, do you want to start?
Yeah, and I'll also say that there's just, it takes all hands on deck to, what our goal is to really, we need to establish generations of that are tobacco free. We're not going to end the epidemic of tobacco use. As I said in my remarks, it's not just youth e-cigarette use. Maine still has a combustible cigarette a problem in many communities, as well as use of other tobacco products like cigars. And so it is take a comprehensive effort until we can create generations that don't use any tobacco products. So I think part of it is obviously adults being aware of these issues. It can, our tobacco control program at the state works with many stakeholders. They work with municipalities to pass policies, but they also work with, it takes the retailers being responsible retailers and following the laws, making sure that there are no underage sales to kids. Also, there are many retailers in the state that are stopping to sell tobacco products because they're realizing the harms that it does to people. And then it takes supporting those in our communities and in our lives who are tobacco users and supporting them to help them find appropriate resources, because once addicted, it can be incredibly challenging to quit. And so getting people the resources, as you heard earlier with the Maine Tobacco Quit Line, talking to your provider, it really takes a comprehensive approach to quit. And then from those of us who have tobacco users in our lives, providing them that moral and emotional support to help them through that quit journey.
Thank you, Hillary. Dr. Stone, do you have any recommendations that you provide to parents and youth and community members, neighbors, friends?
Yeah, I make sure I bring it up early. Even 11 and 12, I'm starting to talk to parents and kids about it, and I tell them, I'll ask them right out how much do you vape? Do you have a vape? If they say no, well, have you ever seen it? Yes. They go, it's gross. I know kids in school, they'll do it. They'll sneak it and they'll say it's gross. Well, continue to think that way, because as you get older, you're going to see more and more and more. And I talk about the vaping, the weed, everything. I go, just because other people are doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. And if people tell you, oh, everybody does it, not everybody does it. So be in that group that doesn't and feel good about yourself. Don't get something that's so addicted that you can get into trouble with, that costs a lot of money and you become addicted to things. So I do that. And, the younger kids, I may have the parents in the beginning talking about it, but I think an open discussion with parents should talk with their kids about it. But also I try to teach them to set good examples. If you're vaping, they're seeing it, they're probably sneaking yours. If you're smoking, they're sneaking a cigarette from you. So be careful and set a good example at home.
Thank you, Dr. Stone. And I just want to give Shane, if you're there still and can plug in, I'd love to just hear if you have any kind of thoughts about, from a community perspective, how, friends can help friends. And in general, you just spoke so passionately about how the industry targets, communities, marginalized communities. Is there anything you can recommend from a peer-to-peer perspective?
Yeah, that's great, Carol. Thank you for pitching this back to me. I used to work in sexual assault prevention, and we worked specifically with high school and college students. And what we know about that age is young people tend to lack the frontal lobe development that understands and recognizes long-term consequences. And so we can say, don't do this, it's bad, you're going to get addicted. But one of the ways we used to frame conversations about consent with parents talking to children is to, if you see an ad, if you see a commercial, if you're in the car together and you see something, it's a great way for parents to strike up conversations with their kiddos to talk about what that looks like and how many of their friends are doing it, and to open up the dialogue. Because when, as Dr. Stone just mentioned, when your kid inevitably tries cigarettes, I think we're past an if point at this point. You've created open lines of communication between the parents and the children to start having those conversations where the kid might say, hey, listen, I tried a vape and it was weird, or I really liked it. And that way you've created the trust between parents and kids. because it doesn't necessarily respond to the, like, you're going to get addicted to this. You know, a 15-year-old doesn't necessarily care about health implications 30 years from now. In terms of the LGBTQ community, it is such a break from what can often be not even rooms or situations that are overtly homophobic or transphobic, but when you are, as I often am, the only trans person or the only seemingly trans person in a space of cisgendered or heterosexual folks, being able to step outside for a cigarette is a really nice break. It's, you know, it's more difficult to say I'm going to go stand outside and stare at the sun for 5 minutes, but if you can say I'm going to go outside and have a cigarette, it's these built-in breaks. And so I think collectively we can normalize talking about self-care and the need to take a break. And especially as we're all on Zoom these days, you know, walking outside for a cigarette is a great excuse to get off your computer, but also I'm going to take a lap around the block and stretch my legs is a great excuse to get away from your computer. And so I think as we are thinking about supporting LGBTQ people, and once Pride returns and we sort of yearn for this normalcy to return to bars, it's up to us collectively. We all know the consequences of smoking, right? We've all been through the DARE programs. And so it's, instead of holding each other accountable and saying, listen, this isn't suiting us. We smell terrible. We taste terrible. And there are so many better things we can do with our health, especially on the heels, what we hope is going to be on the heels of a respiratory global health pandemic. I don't know if any of this was necessarily helpful, but I think having these frank conversations and having openness and having transparency in these communications, and you know, on the flip side, as a former smoker, I'm happy to talk about that struggle. And I think we need more former smokers to chime up and talk about why we quit smoking, what that process was like, how difficult it was, and how amazing I feel now that I'm almost a year without cigarettes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shane. Good. Any other questions or inquiries from members of the media? Well, if not, I will let all of you go, obviously, and just express again how appreciative we are of your participation and interest in this issue. And again, keep me posted if there's anything I can do to help. Happy to do it. And thank you again. And I hope everyone has a nice afternoon. Thank you to our amazing speakers. And we'll be seeing all of you around soon.